Back, the president telling us tonight that school holidays will be moved forward and that schools will will be closed for a longer period, rather. Also news that more children are falling ill to COVID-19.
So let's get the reaction from the education sector. Basil Manuel, Executive Director of the National Professional Teachers Organisation of South Africa. Very good evening to you. Did he do the right thing when it comes to schools and the safety of children and teachers?
Good evening, Jane and Sean. Well, we were consulted. I heard many of your guests saying they weren't consulted. We were. And we met earlier today and we thrashed out a couple of things. And yes, we had met last week as well. So we've been prepared for this. And yes, it is the right thing. We had said we are going to watch the space. We were not happy with the closure of schools for a long time because we didn't want them closing into nothing. With social functions banned, with gatherings banned, it keeps our high school kids that are the most infected and infectious safer. So, yes, it's the right call. However, there are a number of unanswered questions. Is it Wednesday or Friday? We are now confused by the two dates. Is it an extension of the holiday, as Shahan says, and I'm sure a lot of people are celebrating there, but or is it that we are moving the holidays forward and it is still the 2 weeks? But what if the peak is different in different provinces? And then, of course, there's the primary school return. Is that still on the cards in the same way? Now, we are due to hear from the minister, and the president made that clear. So those are some of the questions that NAPTOSA would like to have answered.
Yeah, so of course, Basil, when I spoke to you last week, you were concerned about what you called a lost generation and that you thought kids should go back to school so that that doesn't happen. The Delta variant, of course, as the president says, is now infecting children. They are falling ill, which is a concern. So in that regard, I'm sure you'll agree with it as well, right?
Absolutely. And of course, that is what we've been following. And speaking to various people in the science field, they've been at pains to tell us over the last few days that this is a different ball game. And now we need to be especially careful with our youngsters that are very social and are always on the move.
All right. So one of my concerns is the number of children who rely on schools being open. They rely on schools being open because that's possibly the only meal that they have. So what sort of impact is this likely to have on them and the school year?
Jane, that is always a major concern. Now, you will remember that there was a settlement between the minister and a number of groups that were agitating for feeding beyond this, beyond any closure. And, of course, we've tried that, and it works to a very limited extent because a lot of children don't go to school in the residential area where they live, but rather they travel out, etc. So we are going to have a problem of children not getting the meals, but we certainly are addressing that as one of the major concerns about how do we get meals to kids, because the schools serve many purposes, and one of them is the feeding scheme. It is a major concern for NAPTOSA.
And then let's talk about the vaccines just before we let you go, Basil. Of course, that was supposed to happen over a 10-day period, very ambitious. Do you know how many teachers have been vaccinated till tonight?
Yes, 186,000. And that is now since Wednesday. And remember, not all the provinces were vaccinating. Limpopo only came on board on Friday. The Western Cape only really starts proper on Monday. And so we are doing an average of 50,000 a day, and so that is good going. It's attainable within the 10 days. We're definitely sure about that. I'm worried that the holiday period being moved mustn't disrupt that, because we want to have the momentum continue. Because starting on Wednesday coming, we now do the governing body paid staff. That's the teachers and the private school teachers. And then we do the non-teaching staff thereafter, and the mop-up for those who may have missed it. Some people had the flu and couldn't take the vaccine, and now they will have an opportunity later. So we don't want that disrupted. It's absolutely essential that that continues.
And you don't want kids to fall out, those who have no access to social media. I mean, how difficult is it going to be for them to play catch-up? They're still playing catch-up from the first round.
Jane, it's hardly happening. That's the honest truth, because it's happening with a few schools, and even those schools are now complaining because youngsters are youngsters, and they all log on and to the online classes, and yet you're speaking to empty rooms. They are outside or in the mall, and this has been some of the drama that has been happening. So it has had a limited impact. The television programs have had some impact, but also all of them are limited. In South Africa, in our current context, the face-to-face teaching is still the most effective.
All right. Thank you so much for your time. We appreciate it. Basil Manuel, Executive Director of the National Professional Teachers Organization of South Africa.